Hi, welcome to video 12. In this video, we will learn Introduction to JUnit, writing JUnit program using assertions and various annotations, writing Java program to perform CRUD operation and validating with JUnit, writing Java program for parameterized test, understanding the need of XPath, understanding XPath practically. Imagine we have application, and of course, our application today happens to be in Java. Eventually, what we do is we try connecting to database. So that's what the idea behind connection. So what happened? We tried using driver manager. We did all these things. It gave an acknowledgement, blah blah blah. The story went on. Imagine I have a requirement for you saying that, hey, look at this. I want to do an insert. But this time, when we do insert, we have to make sure the job gets executed within 100 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds. Only then the test case is passed. So maybe the first hit for any testers in the world is calculating the time. So now the idea is how much time does it take? If it is taking anything over 100 milliseconds, I want to fail. So what I can do is I can go back to this Java program. I can have a variable which is called as start time, right? So start time will basically have timestamp of whatever time we have it, timestamp. That's the first thing. And once the job is finished, you can record end time, which is again the timestamp. And we have to calculate intermediate and do something, right? Makes sense. Imagine something like this, where this is the first requirement. This is the first requirement, what I have. Now, which is commonly used. The second requirement is I have insert, update, delete, all to be tested. But when I want to test, I don't want to test it with one value. Rather, I want to test it with 100 values or 1,000 values, or million values, whatever. So if I try doing all these things with the Java, it looks so clumsy. It becomes sometimes impossible by somebody to do it. And I have this is the second requirement. And the third requirement, what I want is I want all these things to run asynchronous. I want to run all this asynchronous. Of course, you can go ahead and try writing your own business logic using threads. You're really good at this, and so on. But the idea behind is not to write everything. Or I have a fourth requirement. The fourth requirement says we want to bypass few tests. So what happens? Eventually, you will have so much of code written. But I say that, hey, look at this, guys. Can we stop testing few tests? Something like update. Can you try to make it? So that's a fourth requirement. Eventually, you try seeing it. It has so many uh, requirements. What we have it in day-to-day activity, or something like I want to capture uh, anybody here who throws exception, who throws exception. So likewise, we may land up with a lot of scenarios when we try writing a Java. One thing is, if you're really good, go ahead, try using Java. But most people in the world, nobody uses Java for testing. Rather, there is a wrapper here which we have, who is called as, instead of Java, somebody called JUnit. JUnit. So what JUnit is? JUnit is basically a testing framework. So when I say testing framework, they have a lot of capacity in order to test the given scenario or test the given story. For example, today we have so many methods, so these methods have to be tested. So, which is there in the method. Maybe you have a nice wrapper here who is called as a DAO. We know that we have a DAO. So, what DAO does? It does pretty much the testing. In not invoke, I don't have somebody called as Java today. Rather, we have JUnit. So, what JUnit does is it will try using the methods which we have already written in the DAO and try pushing the data to the database. And it can also give you the most intelligent or the most required part, 6.1, is reports. So we want reports as what happened. So I want to know how much time each of the test cases have taken, which has been not executed, successfully executed, not successfully executed, how much time, what was the print stack trace, I want to export it to HTML document, blah, blah, blah. So many things which may be required for day-to-day activity. For all those things, we have JUnit. There's another guy who is called as TestNG, who is a close competitor for JUnit. But JUnit is like pretty beautifully done. The good thing about JUnit is when you have any IDEs, they come implicit. So I would rather say in the world, JUnit has become a de facto model for any testing environment in the world, right? So the idea is you want to write a JUnit. So what I do is I'll just collapse it on the same project. Since we already have JUnit, so JDBC, I want to create another source folder. Here I should find source folder, which is called as test. So many times, even in your project, you will have a folder which is called as test. Even when we scaffold the uh, initial project of Maven, you will land up with test folder. So here, let's go ahead and try creating a new JUnit. So I should find something called JUnit. If it is not there, you can click on other. I still have it here, or you can click on other in case if you don't find it, JUnit. On the first case, I don't want to really go ahead and try putting the database connection, but I just want to test few things. So I just click on JUnit test case. Here, we have two versions of JUnit, the JUnit version 3, JUnit version 4. JUnit version 3 means a class which has to be extended from test case, which is again given by uh, JUnit itself, and all the classes which these people were written in the package called as com. So now Apache has come forward with JUnit, and they make sure that all this applications are behaving like freeware, and it's an openware. So they want all their packages to revamp and create it as openware. So for that, they have used R. Of course, apart from that, there are some performance improvement when it comes to uh, JUnit 4. So I still stick on to JUnit 4, and I want to create a nice package. So the package, let's call it as com.sdet.testing or tests. Let's say customer test. That's a good one. So the name, I want to have sample test. That's the first one. So this test will just do a very simple job of writing some hello world program kind of thing. And if you just see below this, there's something called as setup before class, setup, tear down after class, tear down. We're going to talk about this in a little later. And we can generate comments, which we really don't want, but we can go ahead and click on finish. So JUnit is not in the library. That's okay. We can say add. All right. So this is what it happens. So first and foremost, if you want to have your class or if you want to invoke the test case, then you have to annotate that with the test, without which it does not. And we don't want to fail, we just want to delete it. And the method name can be anything. And make sure that there is a static import here, which is called r.junit.assert. So the question is, hey Naveen, what is this happening? Where is this coming from? So if you go back to your Windows and preferences, you should look for something called as JUnit. You should look for something called as JUnit. So if you're using Eclipse, this is how you can figure it out. So when I click on JUnit here, you should see there are a lot of classes which are written. They're all checked. So you have like all this classes checked. So you have r dot JUnit. They also behave like static. Now, when I say static, it means they are kept in your program with only one instance. They don't have multiple instances. In similar fashion, if you have written your own class and if you want to put it here, in such case, we can go with static imports. But of course, static imports is not a very great tool to use it in every occurrence. But again, it again depends on what we try using it. So Jain people try using static import, which will make sure that the class is right there, you can access it. If not, you may have to create an object of the class, which is preferably not required. So now let's go back and do some testing. So in order to do some test, so quick heads up, if I want to do it, I have some variable. Let's consider string result is equal to. Okay. So let's do some good work. So in the source, I just want to write a simple method. Simple method. I use one of the package, not very particular here. So I'll create a class. Let me call this class called as sample. Sample. There's nothing fancy in this class, just a test. So I'll say public boolean uh, say okay. So that's the first method. What this guy does is return nothing much. There's another method. I'll say public string say hello string name. So here I'll say return hello name. These are two methods. So I hope this is clear. So you have like two methods. One is called okay, one is called say hello. So the whole idea here, when we want to test it, we want to make sure this test we want to do it. So this class of which you got, which is in day level package. All right. So here, so what I can do is I can quickly go back and say, hey, we want a sample class which is from day 11, right? Sample sample is equal to new sample. Now for the sample, we'll try having something called as assert. So what is it assert? Assert is only to check either the value is there or not. That's where you have. So when I say assert, you have like various assertions. So let me spend a little time going through this. You can say assert. So first and foremost, if you look at the meaning of assert, again the introduction of assert when it comes to Java, it was introduced in JDK 1.5. The whole idea of assert was something like this. Imagine if you are writing a code and if you want to uh, put the statement, we always try doing it. If, in fact, even I tried doing it many times. So here in Notepad, I have a code which is called as public void say hi. So we do that business logic. You may have some business logic, blah blah blah. We just put. So in between, if I want to track the code, what I do is eventually I try putting system.out.println. So writing system.out.println is really uh, bad idea in the world. We don't encourage that. For this, these people from JDK 1.5 they introduce something called as asserts. So asserts, what you can do is you can check the condition. If the condition passes, perfectly fine. If not, it will give you an assertion exception, and you can try putting that right in the program. And when it comes to execution, you have two choices. Imagine if you're working in developer system, you can enable assertions. When you're working on production system, or if you have ported this code on production system, you don't have to delete this code. You don't have to delete this code. Rather, you can disable assertions. So just to give you a glimpse of it, let me go back to command prompt and invoke something called as Java. I just want to show you here. Somewhere here, you will see something called as EA. EA or enable assertions are something which people will do it. I don't know how many of you have cautiously looked in when we were trying to execute the program. So here, when I right click and say something like run as configurations. If you remember the command line argument program which we were trying to do it on exceptions. So here, if I go back to arguments, you have something called as VM arguments, which is VM arguments, which is virtual memory arguments. These arguments are the values which I can take it from here. I can say disable assertions, I can say enable assertions, and so on. So that's where I can say minus EA, this meaning enable assertions. If not, I can do DA, which is meaning disable assertions, and so on, right? So that's where the need of assertion were introduced in the world. So the whole idea here is to do assertion check whether the test case passes or fails. If it fails, from there none of the statements will execute. If it passes, it will execute rest of the statement. So on the verge of it, these people from JUnit have introduced so many assertions. You have assertions equals, assertions not equals, assertion to, assert false, assert array equals, assert array not equals, or something like assert with same, assert null, assert not null, assert that, assert true. There are like so many asserts which these people have created over a course of time. In addition, we can go with a lot of third-party assertions as well. They give you a customized assertion. You want to check the list, you want to check the map. So you want to check if these two map has same content. There are like a lot of openware tools available in the world who does all these things. So that's the whole idea of doing assert. But anyways, keeping it short, let's go back and do something called as assert here. For doing it, I want to do something called as assert equals. So I want to do assert equals for one of the method. The method which we are looking for to assert is called as say okay, which returns true. Okay. So the first condition happens to be expected. What are you expecting? I'm expecting true. But what is the actual? The actual is sample dot say okay. Now I will pass this test. I will pass this test only when I do assert equals true is the condition what I'm looking for, and the method has to give you true. Only then this is passed. So in order to deal with this, just go back and right click and run as something called as JUnit test. All right. So now, when I say JUnit test, it gives you a green string. So here, the idea is whenever I say green string, this meaning it is passed. So it has some good documentation out there. One is it says how many has run. So one test case is run. There is possibility that I can write hundreds of test cases. Out of that few test cases, I can execute. Is there any errors? There were no errors. There were no failures. There was a test case which this got executed, which executed less than or probably 6 milliseconds, and the test has taken so much time. So probably it generally takes very less than milliseconds. They have a very good performance when it comes to testing here. So that's where they start shining, right? So then we can go back and try having a couple of more tests. I'll say public void test, uh, hello test. So I want to have sample. Sample is equal to new sample. Assert equals. I want to check expected is something. I'll say string expected is equal to. I'll also have a variable which is called as name. Name is equal to Harry. Right. So expected is hello. I'm sure that that is what we have written. So we say hello with a space and the name. So hello with the space. Expected is name concatenated, sorry, is x plus name. So this makes sense. So here plus acts as a appender. The actual is we can go back and say sample dot say hello for name. So that's pretty nice. So we wanted to have hello Harry. That is what we are expecting. And what is actual? The actual is given by somebody post the test is done and try executing it, run as JUnit, right? So here, when I click on it, it should help me to execute both. So here, let me go back and expand it. I'm sorry, we would have done this at the rate test, test. So let's right click, run as J. It does two of two. Let's zoom it here. And if you see here, you have like two of two, the total amount of time taken and the total time. So most times they run less than a millisecond. In our case, it works fine. But when we want to make it with database, it may consume little more time. So let's see in that case. Right. So now what happened? Let's assume we have another test for failed case. For failed case, public void um, hello test, hello failed case test, and we'll make sure that we are annotating this with test. So when I say control space, it should give you here, right? So then let's quickly go back. I want to do a very simple copy paste. You don't have to really go ahead and type it, but I want to delete this, and I don't want to do assert equals, assert not equals, not equals of this case, of this case. So we just go back and delete it. Okay. So this test case will pass when the values are not equal. So you have given Harry and you're expecting Harry, but actual is hello Harry. So let's go and check if things go well. Okay, so all these three test cases are executed. This is the failed case. Yes, the failed case has passed. So eventually, we can make sure there are so many test cases which can happen. So this was all like pretty fine, but I want to do something more. No, I want to look at reducing the code. Whatever we have done, there are few codes which is getting repeated. For example, you see that the object getting repeated here, here, here. So rather, what I can do is I can introduce a method here which is called as public setup. So do remember when I say setup, the method name can be anything. The setup method, this method uh, shall get annotated, right? So the annotation is called before, right? Before, which comes from arc.jnit. And if the annotate, if annotated by before, then if it is annotated by before, then what happens? This then this method is invoked before any method invocation. So I hope this is making sense. So this method will get invoked uh, every time before the method is called. So you have one test, you have second test, you have third test. Every time this is called. Just to prove the point, I'll go back and put some message. I will say uh, in so just go back and run as change. Right. Look at this. The setup have been invoked three times. We invoke setup three times. So why? Because JUnit implicitly understands that anytime if you have a method to be invoked, if you want any method to be invoked, and if you have a method annotated with before, then this method for sure it will call. 100% it will call. If it does not call, it will not, right? Likewise, you also have another method, tear down, tear down. And again, don't. I would still go with a certain recommendation here. Please use in your application like setup and tear down itself. You can go ahead and try using any method of your choice. We're not stopping it, but not a good. So if you see any official documentation of these people or even in the community, so people pretty much try using setup and tear down as a method. So for this guy, I have tear downs are always after. So here I'll say in tear down. So this is in second. Right. So let's go back. Run as JUnit. Okay. So setup, tear down for the first method, setup, tear down for second method, setup, tear down in third method. And here is your output. So all the methods. And again, the good thing or bad thing, whatever you call it as, there is no ordering because all your JUnits get executed uh, in asynchronous mode. Let's go ahead a little. Let's explore a little more. I'll go back to the sample. I'll go back to sample here, here. I just want to give some delay. Thread dot sleep. Nothing special, nothing strike at this point of time. So I want to have like 1,500 milliseconds of delay. So this guy may be doing some job and he is probably killing some time. Assume that this is killing about 1,500 milliseconds before it says hello to me. So let's go back here for our sample test and right click run as JUnit. So it takes little time. It takes little time and see, let's hover it. So there are two times we tried invoking hello test and hello failed case test. So the total time which it took is around 3 seconds. 3 seconds, about 3.005 seconds. That's right, because we have put the thread sleep. Now, imagine I have a requirement saying that, oh, look at this, Naveen, we have a test case. This is all working fine, beautifully good. But I want to check this test case should get passed within 1 second. Only then it gets passed. If it is less than that, it has to fail. So for that, the easiest thing is you just have to come across and do control space here. You have somebody called as timeout. Timeout. So here, expected timeout is equal to about 100 milliseconds. So now we clearly stating that this method has to work within 1000 milliseconds. If it takes over 1500 milliseconds, it means it's failed. All right. So let's go back. Run as J. Great. So do remember, if the test case fails, only then JUnit gives you a print stack trace. So stack trace basically comes in two flavors. One is its own stack trace, or if you like to have a look at the console, obviously there's a nice stack trace here. The nice stack trace here. Now, do you see the exception which you get, which is called sleep interrupted? So what happened? JUnit went ahead and tried executing this method, but unfortunately, uh, before it could get complete, it started interrupting. It started interrupting the value. So that is where the beauty of JUnit will come. So if not, you may have to do all these things, and it's really, really pain in the mind. And there's nothing like framework which as developer can do it every time, right? So here, the timeout will pretty much do it based on the case. Imagine for some reason we don't want to execute this. I just have to go ahead and say equal. I just do at the rating so that this test case would not be executed at all. So here in setup, everything is done perfectly fine. Have a look at this on this report. Here, I should say there are three of three were executed. One is skipped. What is that skip? Which is marked as the stop symbol. And this is where the ignore or you want to execute partially and so on will come into picture. Let's assume that in the sample we have another method. Okay, so just before that, there's something which we have to put since we have introduced what is called a sample with the setup method and so on. So we don't want to write this sample here once twice thrice. Imagine if you have like 100 test cases in this class, will you go ahead and write 100 times? That doesn't make any sense. Rather, what I do is I'll go back and declare a variable which is called as sample. Okay, maybe the good idea is you will not disturb the documentation. Here, here, sample, sample is equal to new sample. Okay, the sample, that's where we started. Probably we can even say this as null. That's a good idea. Now in the setup, I will say sample is equal to new sample. So this is where the instantiation happens. So every time I don't have to do it in test case. So the test case, let it concentrate only on the test case. So what is my test case concentrating on? Only on the test case. So it is not bothered of creating an object and so on. So I'm going to delete it. I'll go back and delete it and things are fine. Things, right? So if you look at the test case is only doing test case job. It is not doing anything like initialization or probably closing the connection and all those things. Let's see how this works. I'll run as JUnit. I'm sure that it should work the same way as the previous one. Yes, tear down because we deleted the setup message which was here, and it works pretty much same. So likewise, you can also have something in tear down. So this is all fair enough. Now, do remember the setup will invoke for every test case. Maybe there are some scenarios where you want to invoke something like setup, but before anybody in the class, and that should happen only once. That should happen only once. For this, before may not work. For this, we have somebody called as before all. So before all, I'm sure that we would have guessed it. It is another annotation which we have got. Let's go back and put that as well. So here, this is for at class level, right? So public void setup, setup makes sense. So here, this method has to be static, because this guy will be there in the world before anybody. That's the whole idea of having it. So let's go ahead and say before all method. I'll say at the rate before class. So let's go back and check JUnit. All right. Before all method was in similar fashion. You also have so here I'll have after class. So like two methods. So let's run as JUnit. Mm, yeah, works very well. So hope this makes sense. And the first thing is we have to elevate. There are few things which we don't want to do it in a core Java. Rather, we can use this. So many times in your applications, you don't see main, because main, what it does, it is only a client which is helping you to invoke it. So those things pretty much we can do it here. So now, without not much delay, I want to write some application with the help of uh, database program which we have done. So we remember that we have a nice business logic in JDBC. So where is this? This is where the JDBC logic is. So the quick thing, let's go back, right click, new. I want to create a JUnit test case. JUnit test case, let us call this as um, uh, customer test, right? Perfectly fine. So you wanted to have all your business logic set up. Please do it here. I'll go back and say public void setup. All right, and I want to have a object which is called as I customer DAO. Very good. I customer DAO. I would say customer DAO is equal to new customer DAO. DAO. Very good. Because that's where all our business logic is. Now, insert test public void delete customer test insert customer test. So I want to have a test. So I want to do a few jobs while testing it. So for all those things, I may also need something called as customer, which is an object. Right. So here I'll say customer is equal to new customer. I want to have customer dot set customer ID. I'll say 201 customer dot set customer name. I'll say Naveen customer dot set customer email. I'll say Naveen dot in customer dot set something like this. So this should be pretty fine because I'm just trying to connect the dots and probably write some good program. We have to make sure what should go here. So what goes in setup, what goes in this place, and so on. So here I'll want to invoke a method which is called this guy, who is customer DAO dot insert the customer. So what happens? The return value obviously is Boolean. Let's store it in flag. So here I'll say something like assert equals assert equals for the Boolean, which we are expecting to return value is flag. So whatever value I get it from the flag, I want to keep it. Let's quickly go back to the delete. The delete will take int customer ID. Let's say something like 333, which is probably not there. I'll say customer DAO dot delete customer ID. So obviously this guy will give you Boolean value, which is flag. So once this guy gives a Boolean value, which we store it in the flag, I just want to assert equals the same thing, which is with true and flag. So let's see if things go well. So let's right click, run as J. All right. So there are a few test cases which would have been passed, few are failed. Let's go and inspect it. So here, a little zoom in. So we'll start reading it. There were like two test cases. Out of two were executed by JUnit. There were no errors, but one has failed. So one has failed. Who's failed? The delete customer has failed. The insert customer has passed. But what is delete customer doing it? Let's have a look at this. So if I just go here, the java.lang assert exception, expected is true, but it was false. Expected is true, but it was false. The reason is here in my case, I don't have 333 in the database. Probably I don't have. So just to prove that point, let me go back to the database, MySQL. Yeah, here we have, yeah, MySQL. So let me put the password. I'll go back to properties, background. Let's make it white. This is where the font. Okay, all right. Show databases. Use online. Okay. Online. Select customer from customer. Great. So we have like 201, which is Naveen, which we have just entered it from JUnit, right? But I don't have 333 where it can delete. So since it is not there, the test case has failed. Makes sense. But at the same time, I want to write something called as 201 here. 201 here. So when I put 201, this time again it will fail because 201 is already existing and there will be a primary key violation in case if you are entering a value again. So let's go back, run as JUnit. So here, 201 has executed. Let's see what is there in the database. So 201 is there. It should throw us an error because that's what we were looking for. Mhm. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This might not give an error for a simple reason. The first time delete was executed. If you just have a look at the output, the delete was executed. Imagine the 201 is deleted, then it is inserted. All right, then it is inserted. For some time, I just go back and say ignore. I want to ignore. So I want to put 201 again. Run as JUnit. Okay. Now look at this. It gives you a nice error. There's a duplicate entry for 201, which is violating primary. So likewise, we can put all the methods for update, select, delete, or probably select all, whatever you wanted. That's more important for us, which is called parameterization. So what I do is I'll go back to the sample class. I just want to try this sample class. It's a simple method, public int, not very complicated, just a simple class. Public int, add numbers, int num1, int return num1 plus. That's where the method is. This method can be as complicated as what we want. It's just a business logic. I'm very sure that any point in time, if we have any business logic in the world, they will return one of the type. So either it is int, float, double, or customer, or bank, whatever. They can have only one return type. That's the whole idea. But as of now, let's assume that this is what we have a business logic, but we want to add about 100 numbers or 1000 numbers and test this, right? For doing it, let's go back and in our test package, I want to create a new class, new JUnit test class, which is called as parameterization numbers test, numbers test, right? Perfectly fine. This sounds good. But now, to understand parameterization, let's chalk out a plan as where we are heading. Let's go back and do it. Now, what happened? We tried introducing JUnit. So, what this guy JUnit is? It's basically a framework. You have a business logic. Business logic is this. This is JUnit. What we want is the same set of values from the test method has to hit to this business logic. Same set of values, but every time it's like a stress testing. So what JUnit does is it provides an opportunity for us to do it by just by few annotations, just a few annotations. What is that annotation? One is at the class level, which is called as parameterized. So we have to do something called as run with, and there is a parameterized dot class. The whole idea here When you say parameterized, it means on this class there will be a stamp saying that this class is a parameterized class. Obviously, we will not stop. We will go ahead and try putting something called as test. So in your test, we will try writing blah blah blah, lot of stories out there, right? Hope that makes sense. Now, I want to pass a value. Somebody should help you to pass values, right? So what we do is we will try having additional method, which is somebody called as pass data. Pass data. So what this method pretty much does is it will give you a list of values. It will give you a list of values. Maybe it may give it as list of values as array also. List of list. That's your choice. I'm sure that when we try doing this dictionary example, if you recall, we had a map of string, list of list of string is one go, which you can try having. Or I can have map of string of list of string of array. Both meaning the same. The thing is, this string is constant size, this string is expandable or shrinkable. But the whole idea is this. Because if you imagine, if I have some numbers, the numbers would be kept in a matrix. All your numbers are kept in a matrix. For example, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100. So you have to assume this. This is basically a list, which is a two-dimensional list. I would say I have a list, right? The list has the array of string or array of integers, or I can say object. What is that array? So this will point to this part. The list will point to this part. So I hope that is making sense. This guy who's called pass data will pass the value every time. He will emit this value. These values to be emitted by pass value. So when it emits in this class, very cautiously, I somehow slipped out of my mind. So do remember, every time there is something called as at the rate test for this guy who is JUnit, what it does is it creates a new instance of the class. Imagine if you have like 300 test case, it means 300 instance of that class is created. Be very clear. So you had a test okay, test hello, test bye, whatever. So if you have three tests, it means three instances of the class will be created. That's the whole idea of doing it. So for this, what we want to do is we have to make JUnit understand, hey, look at this JUnit. We have four values. For this four values, when I try having it, each of this should be treated as test cases. This guy says, fine, but how do I inject the value? For this, we use constructor for injecting the right? And obviously, the constructor will inject a value to the test because this itself is at it's just a normal method, except for it is getting annotated with test, nothing special, right? So if you're vaguely okay, we can put this in a program, then we can understand it much better. So here is the whole story. What is our method? The method is here, sample method, who takes two values, who adds number one and number. So quickly, what I do is I'll declare a few variables private int number one, private int number two, public. This is what your constructor is. That's looking a little long, but still okay. So this I have to do an injection here in number one, int number two. This dot number one is equal to number one. This dot number two is equal to number two. Perfectly fine. Do remember the values for this will be injected by JUnit. So in order to make that, this value is possibly injected by JUnit. So first and foremost, you have to annotate this with This has to run with parameterized parameterized dot class. That's what the class which has to be annotated. So there's a instance variable, there's a constructor. The test case, we're going to come back to the later. So you want to find somebody who can help me to inject the value. So now this method will have the value injection to constructor. So all the values should be populated from here. So I'll have public static. So this should be loaded only once. For this reason, we make it static. I'll say collection or a list. So since we have used list, let's use it. List. So what I want, I use always list. And of course, that's how the JUnit also used because we don't know how many values will be populated. It should be shrinkable or it should be expandable. That's the whole idea. List of what data type, I don't even know. If you know it is string, if you know it is integer, go ahead. If not, just blindly put this as object so that this can handle anything and everything in the world. Object, populate, this makes sense. This method has to be annotated with parameters. Parameters. So this meaning this method will populate parameters for the constructor. So here return arrays dot as list. So what is the list of values we have? A new object of array. So I can just go ahead, try giving some values. So I wanted to have 1, 2. So you can have this value as how as of now it is static values. This can be values populated from database, XLS, etc. Right? So until you have an algorithm. So let's put quickly two values. I'll say 10, 20, or 10, 23. Hmm. So I want okay. I wanted to show you. Let's finish off this 20, 30, 30, 40, to some values out there. This happens to be 50, 60. Great. Sounds good. So this is where we have the value. And we want to test it. We want to test it. So where is my testing? So you have to connect little dots. This is a parameterized class. So first time this method, static method will be included. So this will have two values which are emitted. Now it will look for a constructor which has got two values. Obviously there is a parameter constructor which takes two values. This will be invoked. The values are set. So the values are set. This will go and sit here. Now I want to invoke these values here. Here. I would say, uh, int result is equal to the start num1 plus num. This is not a really good program. I'll be little tweaking this little later, but just for the sake of understanding, let's finish off in the first go. So here I'll say assert equals equals. I'm expecting result. The value is I'll just have setup before. So what is our object? Which is sample, sample. Sorry. Here, I can cut this and put it here. This is also private sample. And of course, we want to make use of sample very nicely. I would say sample is equal to new sample. Here I would do sample dot add number, which is this dot number one. Number. The whole idea here is to check the result with this. I'm expecting this. The actual is this. So let's see how many times it will execute. Run as J. So let's have it here. This guy has executed 5 times. 5 times the test case has passed. That's where the actual use of parameterizations will come. Pretty good with our automation. There could be a lot of different ways where we have to pull the data with, but of course, this is at a very high level. This is list of annotations for JUnit. So first and foremost, at the rate test to invoke the test, you'll have at the rate before, at the rate after, at the rate before class, at the rate after class, at the rate ignore, and you have at the rate parameters. That's it. So if we know these many, we are more than enough to go. Now, what happens in the world is that there are few applications people have written. So most of these applications, as of now, are becoming web-based. So of course, at least when we are using something like Selenium, the whole idea is to understand what is called WebDriver. There's something called as RC, Selenium RC, which probably people don't use it these days, right? Because the whole idea of having Selenium getting its popularity is more on the web-based. So let's concentrate there. I have web, so there could be a lot of websites, a lot of stack of websites where we want to test it. Behind this website, behind these websites, there may be its own database, ERP system, or XML, blah blah blah, whatever. But the website itself is built on some technology which is called as HTML. At the very, very high level, there are a lot of technologies out there which is used, but ultimately, if you try drilling it down as the view what you wanted, that happens to be HTML. People have gone really fancy these days. They have something like AngularJS, React.js, Backbone.js, Vue.js, you have Laravel, PHP technologies, Java, .NET, you name it, there are like hundreds of people who are there in the market. But ultimately, when you go and see the code, it is more of HTML. Now, what we do is we want to write some code. This is our code where we want to test it. Now, again, when we want to test it, just some time back, we had a discussion on JUnit. The idea is if I want to use test case for, if I want to use JUnit, the whole idea is to use something like assert to check whether the test case has passed or not. So I want to send some values. I want to get the values. I want to do some basic operations or whatever. The idea is from the code, it has to hit. But when it has to hit to the browser, there are a few series of steps which you have to do. Now, first and foremost, you have to open. You have to open. Now, open, we will not do it. If you are planning to do everything by your own, then there is no need of Selenium. What we do is we'll ask Selenium, hey Selenium, can you help me to open this website which is called as 1.com. This is 2.com. This is 3.com. Right? So there are a few websites. So can you help me to open? Oh, this guy says, okay, boss, I can help you open. No problem. But Selenium, we don't want to stop it. Rather, what we want is we want to go to this guy who's like HTML, and I want to get some elements. Now Selenium says that's not my job. I don't know how to get at all. These websites which are built in the world has got some standard, and these standards are all written by W3C. Selenium has nothing to do with the W3C, neither Selenium will help it. Rather, in order to get the data which is there in the page, we will or we have to invoke this with certain technique. Now, one happens to be something called as XPath. XPath. Now, a very simplest understanding of what is called as XPath. In database, we use SQL. So what is my SQL doing? The SQL will basically help you to query the data. But if I have a HTML, okay, just to give little heads up as how HTML will look like, we can go ahead and try writing a code, or we can try looking at some sample code. So let me go back. I go to navigator.com/web/registration form. This is one of the sample form which I have created and kept it. So if this is the form, the whole idea is it has got some fields. It has got some fields, some text box, some checkbox, all these things. So if I go and view the page source, you see here. Let me copy a little bit of code, or probably we can just increase the font size. So hope this is visible. So everything is wrapped inside HTML tag. So there's some language, there's a head, and you see that it's all within the tag. It's all within the tag. So there is an opening tag, there's a closing tag. So there's an opening tag and closing tag, and so. And your business logic will start somewhere from this place called as body. So in the body, you have opening tag, you have a div. So div is a placeholder. You have a H1, which is a sign up form. You open this, close it. Open this, close it. Every form or every element here has got an opening tag and the closing tag. Just to have a look at this. You have a H1 tag here. Look at this. The H1 is closed. Have H1 closing, you have a H1 opening. Then you have a form. There's a div. There's a label. The label has opening and closing. So pretty much if I just go back and try narrating this in our case, which is something like this slash HTML. I need this for simple understanding. Slash head. I know I'm typing it again. D slash body. Maybe it has some very simple. Hello slash P. Maybe here in the body section, I have a title, right? So I may go back and put this couple of times, right? This can be represent. This can be represented as a tree. So if you look at this, this is just an inverted tree. So where there's an element which is called as HTML, right? Which is a root that has two children. One is called as head, one is called as body. So this is the root element. It has got two children whose head and body. The head has a child. Head has a child which is called as title. The body has children who's called paragraph. If you see any complicated site in the world, they have to look like this. And this entire story is something called as a DOM. This is called as a DOM. So when I say DOM, which meaning document object model. So document object model. We consider the entire story as document and everything is treated as object. This is called DOM. Now, the idea here is if you contrast between the previous and this one, you have a HTML file, so you want to refer to this paragraph. How do I refer it? So in order to refer it, there should be some mechanism, or I should go with the DOM. But unfortunately, when it comes to direct access into website, you will not have access to referring to this body directly. There are some traversal mechanism. If I want to go to body, I have to go to HTML, go to body. If I want to go to the second paragraph, HTML body, second paragraph. If I want to go to third paragraph, HTML body, third paragraph, and so on. So under this, there could be a lot of complicated things. There could be a lot of methods or a lot of nodes. I'm sorry, right? That's possible there. So how do I access it? W3C W3C proposed something called as XPath. So XPath is you can query here. Do you remember XPath cannot mutate the data? They can only help you to read the data. They can only help you to read the data. So I can go here and say, hey, look at this XPath. Can you give me this? On the verge of giving it, there are a few mechanisms which we just have to understand. The first big thing which we have to understand before heading even towards Selenium is to understand what is called as XPath and how it is written. So let's go back to our diagram here, which we had partially written it. Okay. So now we have XPath. So what this guy does is he'll go here and invoke it with the help of XPath. This XPath will inject it to Selenium. Now I'll give the implicit or some kind of information to Selenium saying that, hey, look at the Selenium. You take this value, which is a XPath, give it to this website. The website will give you some element. Based on that, you want to do a test. Whatever test. The test can be anything. You want to get the value, you want to put the value, you want to assert the value, uh, you want to take a screenshot, whatever. That's a different story altogether. But the whole idea here is to get this data. So with not much delay, let us go ahead and try understanding what is called as XPath. So there's a nice slide which I have kept it here. So let's quickly run through what is called XPath in our case. So first and foremost, XPath is a syntax used for selecting parts of an XML document. So this could be XML document or HTML documents. So these days, the HTML have become stringent to make sure that every opening tag should have a closing tag. The way XPath describes a path to elements is similar to the way the operating system describes paths to files. XPath is almost a small programming language. It has functions, tests, and expressions. XPath is W3C standard. That's where it's so popular. XPath is not itself written as XML, but extensively used in XSLT. The intention of using XPath was to introduce the usage in XSLT, but now there are a lot of tools who use XPath. Somebody like Selenium, just for an example. So, few terminologies. Let's quickly understand. We have a library, and we assume that there is a book. So each book will have a chapter. So they'll have paragraph. The paragraph will have sections, and they may also have chapters. So we may have to read. Library is the parent of book. Yeah, library is a parent of book. Book is a parent of two chapters. Book is a parent of these two chapters. The two chapters are the children of book. These two chapters are children of book. And the section is a child of second chapter. Section is a child of second chapter. Right? So when we try talking in XML, we have to be very clear in terms of uh, using these phrases. The two chapters of the book are siblings. So you have two chapters. This is one chapter. This is another chapter. These two are siblings. Library book and second chapter are ancestors of section. So there's a section. The parent of that is chapter. Parent of that is book. Parent of that is library. The two chapters, the section and the paragraph, are the descendants of the book. The chapters and sections are descendants of the book, or they are children of it. So let's understand path, how your operating system are different from XPath or how they are similar. So in operating system, we use forward slash as a root directory. I'm trying to narrate this in a operating system, something like Linux or Macintosh. If you are coming from a Windows operating system, so there we don't have forward slash, rather it will be backslash, right? And we don't have a root directory. Everything is a drive that you will keep it something like C drive, D drive, E drive, and so on. So the whole discussion here, when I say operating system, I'm referring to Linux or Macintosh. As a forward slash is root directory in XPath, this is called root element. The forward slash is called root element. So forward slash users dev foo, the file name foo in dev in users directory. So here the same old story. Every section element in the chapter in every book in the library. That's how we have to read. Foo is a file name in the current directory. Here it is a select section, which is the current element. Dot is current directory. Dot is current element. Dot is parent directory. Here it is called parent uh, element. That's perfectly fine. It's pretty much the same. So we can also go ahead and try using wildcard characters with something like asterisk, all the files, users and Dave. So here also we are pretty much good to go ahead and try using asterisk. So there are some good usages of slashes. The path that begins with forward slash represents an absolute, and the path which begins with forward slash is represented as relative, right? So there are a few brackets, there are a few functions. When I say anything like parentheses, there are a few functions which these people have already written it and kept it. The numbers in the bracket are basically the matching count. We basically go with arrays. For example, if I have like a 5 paragraph, now if I want to refer to the third paragraph, I have to pass it in a square bracket. That's how it goes with. We can go to library. In the library, I can go and get the first book. So, or I can get all the chapters. That's how you have to read. Whenever you have forward slash, you have to say all chapters, second section. This meaning get all the books, chapter one and second section. That's where you have it. So you have like uh, only matching elements are counted. For example, if the book has both sections and exercise, the later are ignored while counting the sections. You have few functions out there who's called as last. So I want to refer to the last chapter, I can pass it as the last. Or if I want last but one, I can also go ahead and try doing arithmetic operations. Stars, of course, we have tried doing it, a little introduction. So if I want to refer to all the, select every child of every chapter of every book, then we can use something like this. We can use forward slash book asterisk, this meaning anywhere book and every element of the book. I can say forward slash star, forward slash star, this meaning a forward slash paragraph, this meaning any paragraph who's got three ancestors. If I say forward slash asterisk, this will give you every element in the entire document. Certain times we can go with the attributes as well. Now, attributes is something like this. If I have a chapter, I can have an attribute which is called as number 5. In that case, I can say if I want to know all those people who's got attribute, so this will give you every element who's got attribute. The next guy is I want to get all the chapters who's got an attribute which is called as num. In fact, this can be really, really fancy. I can use and clause or negation. I can use multiple and so on. In our discussion, we're going to do that. So the attributes too, quick heads up. The chapter at the rate num selects every chapter element with an attribute num. Chapter not num, obviously it's a negation of it. Chapter at the rate asterisk selects every chapter element that has any attribute. The not will just negate it. So if you have attributes, you can play around with the values as well. For example, I'm looking for a chapter with number 3. Perfectly fine. Or I can look for something like normalization, which is basically if you have some values which is with the spaces or some tabs starting with or ending with, this is a very nice function, which is to normalize the spaces. So what we do is now let's try writing a program on this to understand this much better as what is XPath, how to make use of it. So in order to do that, I use a Notepad++, write our own XML, which will help you to locate it. So first and foremost, every XML document will start with question mark within the angle brackets. Do remember, if you have an XML document, it should be the first line, first character starting with this. This can not even be second character. Be very sure, because this is called as processing instruction. This is called processing instruction, not even comment. So if you want to have comment, it's only after the first line. So here XML version 1.0. Right? Let's save this. So I'll put it on desktop. This is actually XML file. I should find this here. XML. Let's say sample.xml. Right? So here we want to represent few details. Let's consider I want to go with library, or I can go with employees, customer, banking. Anything is good enough. So since we've been using employees very frequently, EMPLOYES, employees. So every employees become a root element. I can have department, right? I can have department. So multiple departments. Makes sense. So here in each of the department, I'll have employee, right? Employee, good enough. So this employee shall have a name. He'll have first name. Let's consider first name, last name, last name. Then I'll have address. So I'm just constructing some nice XML so that we can take it away. Then I'll have house number, let's say 101. Let's say city. I'm sorry, state as state, and so on, right? So you can go ahead and keep data whatever you want. So I will have one employee. Let me copy this employee. I'll just uh, have a replica of this here. So I'll have Ashwini. This is Ashwin. I'll say 100. Right? This is like one. Right? So some data. So we have like some nice element. This is the first element, or the first employee. This is the second employee. We also have department. So here I'll quickly have one more employee with minimal data. So just want to prove few points. I'll not give address. So let's have I'll say Ravi. Right. So makes sense. So this is fair enough. But if I want to view this, let's go back to our desktop. This is what the file is, sample.xml. I'll open this with some browser. Okay, so let's go to Chrome and open it. So on your desktop, I should find sample. All right, there's an error here. So error at line 8, column 16. Let's go back and check line 8. Uh-huh. Okay, I made a mistake. I should have not started with forward slash. It starts with the tag and it should have an ending tag. Forward slash is ending tag, anyways. So employees missing because I have an ending of employee, but I did not have start time. Yeah, that should be fine. So little hiccup there. But the whole idea here, if you see, it gets created as a document. It's just a tree. So I can collapse. You can get the name, address, employee, name, employee, department, and the department, and so on. That's how the entire world will look like. So if I just go back to my page, which we had constructed, so even here, I can collapse it. The whole idea is you can collapse it and expand it. So now we want to test the XPath as how to extract it and do it. There are like some good softwares in the world which does somebody called as Altova, XML Spy, there's Oxygen. There are like various people who, but our concentration is not completely to learn or to become masters of XPath, but just to understand. So for this, let's go back here and look somebody called online XML evaluator. So there are some good people who are uh, free formatted. You have Code Beautify and so on. Mm, yeah, I think we should be good. We can go ahead and try executing this XML. Let's see. I will copy this code. Just to Control A, right click copy. Here, I just paste it. Or if you want, you can upload the file, whatever is good. I want to evaluate the XML path. So let's see what is my XML path. I want to get the names of all employees or the first name of all employees. I can say forward slash employees as of now. Employees. It will locate to this parent element. Let's put that test XPath. Okay. So when I test XPath, look at this. This is my original XPath, and this has given complete employees. In this, I may need department employee. So let's test this. Who's the first employee in my department? Let's see here. I should find all those employees who are there in my database. For this, I want the first employee. So what we do is we'll go with square bracket. So you see here, there's something called square bracket of 1. So let's test the XPath. So it should give me the first employee for that matter. So it refreshes. So here I should find the first employee. Where is that? In each department, it is giving me the first employee. So who is the first employee? Who is Ashwin is either here? It is Ravi Kumar here. In this, I want to know first name. So I just want to get the first name. So test the XPath. Let's see if okay, did I make the mistake? Employees department, employees department, employee. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There is a name. If you just go here, employees department, employee, you have to go. Under the name, you have first name. Under the name, you have first name. So I want the first employee. Under the name, you have first name. So that's why it said no match. So let's do that XPath test. All right. So do you see it gives you like two names? One is Ashwini, one is Ravi, who are first employees of each department. But I'll say, okay, give me the first employee. It should give me uh, under the name, the first name. I'm sorry here. I don't. I want to have only the first here. I'll give the first name and the first. Uh, first name is good, but it is giving you both the name. Let's try this. The zeroth element. Okay, I'm sorry. So the first name, I'm sure that this should give you name because even here I have name. Give me a second. Yeah, this is giving you an element where Ashwini is also coming, Ravi's data is also coming. So I want to go to department. Okay. The first concern is I should have got the first department people only. I don't want multiple. I don't want both department to be loaded. So it should work fine. Now, yeah, I should get Ashwin. We just have to be a little specific in terms of getting it. I had to say, go to employees, get the department, which department it is. It was trying to load both the departments. In both the departments, it used to get the first name. So obviously, it will give you Ashwini as well as Ravi. So now I'll go to first department, get the first employee, get the first name, and get the first name. So that's where we can try accessing the data. It is more of a querying on the data, which is written in the form of HTML format or XML format. Is that fair enough? There are a lot of tools which can help you to generate this as well, which can help you to generate this. You don't have to really write this. In fact, this may be the first and last place where we will write our own XML. There will be places where the tools can help you to extract the XML. So there are some good tools which is possible there who can help us to extract that. So let's see if so here. So you can I don't know. There was a few websites. Give me a minute. Let me do a quick search, which is one I have it, which is called as Auto XPath. So this guy, yeah, XML. This guy should help us. Let me just see. Yeah, inside your XML in the big text field. Okay, so let's go back and try taking our XPath. So XPath is this. I just Control A, right click, copy. Let me minimize it. So here, I'll just go back and paste it. So I just click on the city. It is just loading. Uh, Here, yeah, yeah. So if you just see this, I have loaded it. I have clicked on any element. For example, if I click on employee element, it gives you what is the X path of this. If I click on Arjun, so if I want to locate something called Arjun, so when I click on it, it'll give you the X path. If I want to locate with somebody as Kumar here, which is the last name, I just do a single click, which gives you the value of Kumar. So if I want the employee here, the second employee, I can do that here, right? So they're like a pretty nice, cool features available in this website where we can extract the XPath itself. And there are a lot of other mechanisms where we can try using it for generating XPath and so on. So one of the quick things, at least in our web, in our discussion, to have is something like this. We'll go to some website, some website. I'll just go. Okay, let's consider Yahoo.com. Yahoo.com. So just loads a website which is having probably the field data. That's where go with. So I'm using a browser called Google Chrome. So the whole idea is it's got some good features of that. So let me write. You have an option here which is called as inspect. Inspect. So let's assume if I want to refer, if I want to refer to some element. or some element. Let's consider I want to get this element which is called as trending now, or I want to get something like petrol and diesel prices, right? So quickly, I can just select an inspector. Be very cautious to look at this. I'll just select an inspector. So when I select an inspector, it turns out to be a little bluish color. Then hover your mouse wherever you want. So wherever you want. As you move it, this place will keep changing. This place will keep changing. So I want to locate to something called as petrol and diesel prices. The moment I click on that, it'll give you a highlighter. Okay, hey, look at this. This is what you have selected, and this is what the styling which you've got. But if I want to get the XPath of this in Google Chrome, just right click, copy, XPath. So this implicitly comes in every browser. You don't have to really worry about it. I'll copy the XPath. If I go back and paste it here, this is what my XPath is. So what has it happened? It has got all the elements, found every element out there, finding an ID with this or UI with whatever name. Under this div, UL li of 4 a span of 2 is what is this element, which is called petrol and diesel prices. And this is where the extracting becomes easier. But the whole idea, which we have to know when it comes to XPath is a tool or a small programming language which can help you to locate an element in the given HTML document or any website in the world. So that is where we started our discussion with here. If I just go back to Sketchpad, all right. So here we can inject the XPath. How do we inject the XPath? There are a lot of inspecting elements. So we can inspect the elements from the web. So inspecting is there with a lot of people, Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer, Opera. So everybody pretty much does this inspecting of an element. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.